Hello and welcome to this week's landscape photography vlog. In this episode, you're joining me on a trip up Hart's Peak in Tasmania's far south, where I'll take you through the process of shooting relatively complex scenes which require both focus stacking and exposure blending. I hope you get something out of watching my channel, and thanks so much for being here. Oh boy, look at the place I'm at. I cannot believe how lucky I am. This is Hart's Peak, which is just on the boundary of the Southwest National Park. And about an hour and a half ago, all of this, all these clouds started rolling in from the ocean, and they're very, very low. And I reckon I'm about twice as high as they are. Have a look at this. Absolutely incredible conditions, and it's just such a nice spot too. Like you see, there's all of these pandanus growing, which I'd say are some of my favorite plants in Tasmania. But it's also late November, which means that, sorry, there's so many little muzzies and flies about. It's also late November, which means some of the native flora is in season at the moment, and that's usually the waratah. Oh my god, it's so itchy. Waratah. But yeah, I don't think they grow up this high. We'd be at about 1,200 meters now. But what we have up here is scoparia. Oh my, look at them. Jesus, getting eaten up. But what we do have up here is scoparia, and that's looking like this. There we go. I hope that's, yeah, there we go. So it's just very nice to get a little bit of color in, in our landscape. And what I've lined up here is a shot on the wide angle. And seeing as I'm in the shadow here, in the shadow beneath the top of Hart's Mountain, flies on the lens, and I'm in the shadow here, and there's that huge cloud inversion out there, which means obviously this is super high dynamic range that I'm shooting, and I'm very close to the foreground. So I've got a focus stack and then bracket for the highlights. But let me just show you really quickly how I'm doing that. All right, so let me take you through A, the composition, and then B, how I'm capturing this scene. That is a focus stack and an exposure bracket. First off, in terms of how I decided to compose this, is at the moment we're looking at the shadow. So you see how the scoparia is coming in from the right. And I feel like what offsets that quite nicely is the tarn here, because it obviously, it's reflecting light, it'll stand out, it'll be a point of interest. And then right in the center of the frame, we've got the mountain. So there's not much to this composition, but I think the tricky part with this one really is how we're going to shoot it, and that is by starting with a focus stack. And once we've got the whole scene at focus, we then start exposure bracketing, stopping down our shutter speed until our highlight details are retained. So we start with, have a look. At the moment I'm exposed for the shadows. So you'll notice how you can see all the detail down here, and the histogram on the left side of it, so it's the bottom at the moment, is not touching the sides of the histogram, which means we're not losing any information. I'm also shooting at f/16 to just manage maximum depth of field. I prefer to shoot f/11 with this lens, but if I did that in this case, the focus stack would turn into a complete nightmare, and I just know I'd never touch the files and never actually process this. But at f/16, I'm sacrificing a little bit of lens sharpness for actually workflow I want to be dealing with. Right, so let's get into step one, which is the focus stack. Like I said, we're currently exposed for the shadows, and we're going to stick with that because it's the shadow area that we have to blend in, that we have to focus stack. I use back button focusing. So we zoom into the furthest, the closest element, and as you can see, it's completely blurry. And we'll get that into focus, and now we know the closest elements to our lens are going to be in focus. Get that shot now with a 2-second timer. And now we just start working our way backwards further into the scene. Backwards, further away, I don't care. And check it out, like as soon as I'm going a little bit further back, we're already losing focus. Yeah, that's mad. It's 6 inches and it's already out of focus. So thank God for f16 in this case. Here we go. That's focus stack number 2, and we just keep doing the same thing. We'll just work our way further back into the scene. Yeah, about here. That's just where it's starting to get blurry, and now it's sharp. That's the 3rd shot. Already I feel like this is going to be a pain, but it's worth it. And from now, I'd say it's a max 2 more focus stacks. Let's have a look. Yeah, this is the next plane. And I reckon we should be at hyperfocal distance now, which means the entire rest of the scene is in focus. Quite hard to tell whether it is or not. I can't really look through the viewfinder right now, because if you look at my setup, it is incredible how I am not absolutely losing my marbles shooting like this. Look at this. It's not just the setup, it's also where I've got my bum placed at the moment in some of the spikiest, lovely flora. But hey, anyway, we do it because we love it. But I'm just gonna, yeah, just because I'm not 100% sure whether this is in focus or not, I'll do another I'll focus on this as well. And here we are. Now I've definitely got everything in focus. So now we're going to step 2, which will be, you'll notice how the highlights are completely blown out. There's absolutely no detail retained. Obvious on the monitor, but also if you look at the histogram, it's completely spiked on the right side, on the highlight side. So now all we have to do is, we know that all of this in the background is in focus. So now we just start stopping our shot down 1 stop at a time. And as you can notice, look at the histogram, our information is coming back in. We'll go down another stop. And I think this is where we want to be at. There is a little gap here, just on the right, on the top of the histogram, on the right side, on the highlight side. And that means we've got all of our information captured. You know what, just to be safe, I'll do another one. Yeah, it's definitely fine. But that's really it. Like it's not rocket science. It's quite intuitive, really. If you've done it a couple of times, you'll just get into the habit of shooting like that most of the time when the scene requires it. Man, I love photography where you just need 1 exposure and that covers you. But sadly, we don't get that all too often, especially when the light gets very good. Yeah, so from here, I'll take all of these shots, I'll put them into Photoshop, I'll focus stack it. Really what I'll start with is, I'll start with the exposure blend, and then I'll focus stack our exposure blended shot against all of the other focus stacks to get a full scene. It's pretty straightforward, it's just a bit tedious. If you'd like me to demonstrate how I go about that in post-processing, let me know in the comments and I'll put together a video for that. But for now, that's really it. Golden Hour is just kicking off, and I reckon I'm going to go for a little dash around to see what else is happening, because this cloud inversion is just kicking off and the light's just getting so wonderful. So I'll put the shot up. I'll put the shot up now, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye. So I headed back up the summit and was greeted with the most beautiful sunset scene. And as I love to do in such moments, I sat down on the ground with the telephoto lens strapped to the camera in front of me and just picked scenes out in the ranges to the west. And with hardly any wind present, I eventually put on an ND filter and had some fun dragging out the movement of the clouds below. Isn't landscape photography simply wonderful? If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel. I thank you in advance for it. And until next time, bye.